What is your elevator pitch? And I'm not talking about your latest project. I'm talking about yours. What you like to write, how you want to grow, something interesting about your background, a snapshot of yourself that you could pitch to an agent or manager. If you've never thought about that before as an elevator pitch for yourself, I suggest you do. Manager producer Peter Katz joins me today to talk all about representation, from how long a query letter should be, to the questions you should be asking yourself as a potential client, to the way he preps his own clients for pitch meetings, which I'm still thinking about and I'm definitely going to use. This is my conversation with Peter Katz. Here we go. All right, this is the Story Series, the podcast for writers who break the rules. Peter Katz, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
For those who don't know, you are the founder and CEO of Story Driven, a management and production company. So, Peter, before we get into it, could you just tee up what kind of production company you are and the kind of clients that you represent?
I work with a lot of writers and directors, focus on genre, but I've also worked with some people who are outside of that space. And I like things that are provocative, that get your attention, that are strange. That's for me, I like things that when I was younger, going to a video store, I would be like, oh man, like that is what I want to watch. So for me, I lead with my passion as a fan and then drives my interest to commit as a producer and a manager.
What was the kind of impetus for starting, for kind of going out on your own?
So initially I worked in indie film. The first projects I produced, one was called Homesick, another was called Pop Skull, and I worked with my brother Evan Katz and the filmmaker Adam Wingard, and we worked together making these movies. It was like a slasher, and then the second one was like this crazy psychedelic ghost movie, and from there I worked on other indie projects. But ultimately, I wanted to expand to management because I like working in collaboration with an artist outside of one project.
The number one question on every writer's mind, and I'm mostly in the animation space, so there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities too, which is, how do I get representation? And I would kind of asterisk that with, how soon should a writer be thinking about representation?
I think that everybody should just look at what their goals are, because I think there's a lot of creators that don't really need that. They could just make, content online and be successful. But if you're like, I really want to sell, a script into the system or whatever, then, it wouldn't hurt having these reps involved. Usually it's a manager first. Um, but I'm sure there are agents that could also bring in new talent, but
Mhm.
largely it's managers.
Yeah.
And I think the key is also knowing what kind of person, where you fit in, or what kind of genres you love. Because like if you really want to get into a specific space and you're like, hey, I do really weird indie movies, there are probably reps who rep directors that have like a track record of that. So like, generally there is certain clusters of types of clients within, with a reps, list.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's more eclectic. It could be all sorts of things. Other times it could be super focused. But I
Yeah.
think you want to kind of see yourself maybe with the type of client they rep. Maybe they're at your level or maybe they're slightly ahead, but kind of seeing within they're close to where you're at is helpful.
Yeah.
Because if they're way more advanced, there's also a chance that you might be like the smallest person on the roster. So you might not get as much attention if they have a lot of clients. So I think you really want to know too, what is the bandwidth of the person representing you? And
Yeah.
what do you expect from them? Are they there, here or there, kind of check in? Or are they there trying to drive business? I think there's different styles and they're case by case, like I mentioned, depending on what your needs are.
I love that. And so I think it's on the writer, the potential client, to identify those things within themselves.
Mhm.
And so could you give an example of the types of relationships you have with clients, where sometimes, and I have a manager, sometimes it's like you're a career coach, and sometimes it's like you're giving feedback on written material, and every client's needs are a little bit different. And so how do you see your relationships with clients?
I think each client has their own personal expectation of me. And I think that you just have to see what their needs are, and we kind of almost create our own specific thesis of a collaboration
Mm.
versus a global thesis of my company. I have to look at what they want from me. For instance, some people are more into serious development and they really want to like get in there and work together. There's other clients that want to kind of disappear for a little while and come back with something interesting. So I think that I have to know what their needs are so then I know how to serve them.
So it's individualized.
Mhm.
Yeah, and how do you know that a client is the right fit for you?
So I think that I think it is important to know that like my tastes or my perspectives, it's all subjective. There's no rules, right? Everyone has their own way of doing things. And you could look at somebody and you could see that they're talented, right? In any medium, you could look at a painting and see the most beautifully painted apple, and you're like, that took a lot of skill, but that apple does not speak to you. You're like, okay, I get it. It's like that took talent. But I think I've said it in the past is that art needs to speak to me. Like when I watch stand up comedy, like there's comedians that I get, and I'm like, they get me, like they're speaking to me, or you're going through a hard time, you listen to certain music, it speaks to you. So it's like there's a certain kind of way you connect with it that goes beyond whether it's talent or someone saying it's not the person's not that talented. It's the characteristics and qualities work. So that's kind of why I will rep somebody or versus where I won't rep with them. It's not I'm not repping them because they're not talented, is that I'm not connecting. And if I can't connect with it, it's harder to sell.
It goes back to that, them kind of seeing in themselves something that is also in you. Because if you have a specialty, it's like, is that the road that they want to go down? And then there's something common that you can hopefully speak to, right?
Yeah, it's do I first love it?
Yeah.
I guess it's simple as that. Do I love their work, which is my taste specifically? Two, do I see that we could collaborate together? Does this make a team? Because just because the person's talented, our temperaments might be different. So ideally, it's like passion and partnership. If we can lock that down, then we'll be a successful team.
Yeah, I like that passion and partnership. And in terms of that collaboration, uh, my head went, will they take their manager's advice? And what could you go a little deeper on what that collaboration looks like?
Well, I think it's kind of like when you're playing sports or anything, or watching sports and you're seeing how people work together, that you have a shared goal.
Mm,
You may have some differences, but you have enough of a focus to work in harmony to be successful.
mm.
And that's what I'm looking for. Like I'm not always right, I could be wrong sometimes, or we could go back and forth. But I know they say the term manager, like I'm just managing these people. And no, it's to me, it's like these are my partners. We have many businesses across all these different, individual projects and different clients. So we have a partnership.
Yeah.
We participate in different ways, but ultimately, whether or not it's a manager kind of partnership or I'm a producer working with other producers or other filmmakers that I don't even rep, is that we're all working together with a shared goal. We got to respect each other and have a good culture of each collaboration. And that's how we're successful.
Yeah. And like taking a step back in terms of someone getting in touch with you, because before we sat down, we are talking about how many query letters you get every day. What is a good query letter, and what is a type of query letter that people should avoid writing?
First off, I appreciate anybody who's trying to connect with me. I respect that. But I think that just like I have to try to sell every day, every day I try to get people locked in on a vision to get involved with a project, to go in the direction I think is the best one for, where it's at. You have to really think about who this individual is. And if it's someone that I don't know that I'm trying to sell, it needs to be as quick as possible. What is the most low friction way to sell to somebody?
Mm,
That's why people talk about log lines so much. It's like one sentence. Now, a log line is not encapsulating the complexity of the human expression, but it is a way you got to collapse it because you're dealing with someone with limited time. When you're selling to a rep, they also have a limited time. They don't know, you're not proven. You don't have that shorthand. So I think the letters need to be like, hey, so and so, here's my log line. This is what it is. Maybe a tonal reference. It has the tone of Fight Club, whatever. Like, give it a sense of like where does it land? And for your bio, if there's anything that's really like incredible, like, hey, I have this track record. I was an assistant in this writer's room, or I have a short story published in this impressive, outlet that's a literary outlet or something. Like, there's something there. So it's just clean. It's like, this is what I'm about. Quick. This is my project, and it's one project. Like, I don't want to get 20 projects, because really, like, a lot of the time I'm running around and I look at my phone, I get an email, and I'm like quickly looking at all my emails. Then I have family or friends messaging me too. So I got all these messages. My brain is just so distracted always. And then I get that email and I look at it and I go, quick. It's like it's just a snapshot. Now the problem is, if I'm scrolling the letter and keeps going and going and going, that's going to be hard. So I think it needs to be a quick, here is my idea, one sentence. Here are my signals. Like, if there's anything. Now, if there's no signals, that's fine too.
And what's the signal?
Like a market signal, like, hey, I have an agent, so I'm also looking for a manager. The
Okay.
agent is a signal, like, oh, they could work with.
I've never heard that expression, market signals. I like that.
Like, a market signal to me is, hey, I was in the Sundance lab, or like, because
Okay.
also too, not only are you looking for a high quality idea or writing, you also want to know, can this person work in the system?
Ah,
So if they came out of nowhere, you're like, have they produced a play? Have they done, like, what have they done? Because you're also trusting them in a way as a representative of you.
yes.
So you're not just repping them, they're repping you as the rep. And you want to know that they have experience like doing something, like they know that,
Yeah.
so because if you don't know what they've done, you could read the greatest script ever, but then you're like, can they work with people?
Right. And so in those cases where you see something that interests you and you just hit reply and say, send me the script, and then you read it. And then if it's something that resonates with you, then do you do like a Zoom face to face? What's your process to sign a client?
I think it's face to face, and if the person doesn't clearly seem connected to my networks, maybe look for references. Because ultimately, it is hard creating, stories that people care about, and like connecting and creating incredible characters and all that. But then the other hard part is that back and forth of what a collaboration looks like. If you're a director working with a producer, if you're a writer working with other collaborators. So it's like this. So you really want to make sure that they're ready for that next step,
Yeah.
unless they're like, hey, I'm super indie. I can just make everything on my own. I don't want to work in the system. Well, then they're not going to get notes. They'll just do their own thing. And if that's what they want to do, that's a different kind of creator.
Mm.
But if it depends on what their ambition is. Like, some weird filmmakers, I could just do it all on my own. I have my own equipment, my friends. As long as, we could work well together, it's fine. But if they're like, hey, I want to like work in a bigger system, you want to make sure you're not just plugging them into the system and they kind of melt.
Let's say you're in a face to face with a prospective client. What kinds of questions should a client be asking a manager?
Why me? Like, why did this work? Because I think that there's almost a assumption that you're just talking, so this is you. But I think sometimes the relationships could get negative because one person's dream of what they want to be is completely the opposite of what that person wants to turn them into.
Mm.
They need to know that their goals are in lockstep together. And of course, things could kind of change over time, and then they kind of see where they're at. But they can't just go in there and go, oh, I got interest. They should go, why are they interested in me? What do they see me for? What kind of projects? Like I said, when you're working with somebody, ideally you have a flexible thesis. Before you work with them, you also should have that.
Mm.
What do you want me to do? What are your expectations? And I think that's critical from the very beginning.
Yeah, and are there questions that and it might be similar to what you just said that you or managers will typically ask a prospective client?
I want to know, like, you know, how prolific they want to be. How much do they want to write? Do they want to write outside the system? Do they want to be working with like more partners, like getting something, into the Hollywood machine?
Mhm.
Are they super indie, or do they want to be like, actually selling their scripts, selling TV shows, So I think always tracking where they're at and vice versa. It's like,
Yeah.
like, what does success look like?
Oh,
Ask them for both sides.
yes.
As a manager, what does success look like to you?
It's
And
great vision, yeah.
to the potential client, what does success look like to you? See if that some sort of way meets in the middle.
Before we sat down, you were talking about how audience size has changed, or at least how creatives can think about their audience and be more localized in some sense. Can you talk to that? What kinda gave that insight?
Well, I think that in tech, it's called a tech startup. It's called a minimum viable product. What is the least you have to give of something for, like a venture capitalist who invest in it,
Mm,
or potential partners like bringing it on a program, or someone business development? You're using this thing, whatever it is, if you're showing how an app works, right? But I think in a way with storytelling in the same way, it's like I want to sell a TV show. I could one have a pilot, take it out with my manager and agents, and just go to all these people that will decide if this is worth making. Like, this is, put the money in. Is it worth making? So that's one version. The other version is you could go, you know what? I'm going to create a podcast. I'm going to create videos on TikTok. So in a way, instead of like giving all the power to a select few individuals, you're literally just opening up. Anyone could weigh in. You might, like you could just find new fans, right? Now, here's the thing. It doesn't mean that your TikTok videos need 20 million views for your digital series. What if all you had was a few hundred? Okay? Well, a few hundred. But one of the people who watched your TikTok videos is an intern at Heartbeat, Kevin Hart's company. Mhm. They share it with a creative executive who goes, have you seen this thing? And it goes up and up and up and up. People are like, this is good. It doesn't, like, I think the misconception is that everybody needs to go viral or everything needs to be giant. That's true. It doesn't hurt to have a huge audience. But if you make something that you take outside of the traditional channels, you're allowing anybody to see it. And I think to some degree, like the blacklist was that with screenplays. It was like, oh man, I got this wild script in my company. I want more people to check it out. So it really was opening up more doors to get writers repped, get the project produced. So it created that opportunity because it's all curatorial. You're putting it out there in the world. So anytime there's systems where you can get your voice exposed, I think it's great. I think contests, they serve a point. But that said, there's also other avenues where you could showcase your writing, your directing, your acting, your comedy. And obviously everyone's done that and they recommend that and they show the success stories and it's like, oh, that's great. But then I go, what if you stop looking at yourself as a filmmaker and a screenwriter? Stop looking at, oh, I'm a filmmaker. It's like Christopher Nolan or whatever. What if you look at yourself like you play in a local band? Okay. Very local band will play at the local dive bar, or if they're in high school, they'll play at a friend's party. There's the local band. They're not Guns N' Roses, but they're cool. But what if they get a little bit bigger? You're in San Diego, you play at the bigger venue, and you play at the bigger venue. Sooner or later, you're on the radio, but you're not like everywhere. You're on the local radio station that reaches, I don't know, like people. But I'm saying is if it's not precious, it's like, hey, when you play in a local band, you're like, I'm the singer, I'm the drummer. Let's go out there and do stuff. And I think sometimes the problem with at least what I've seen in film is sometimes you need that wrapper of legitimacy where it's like, it's at a film school, it's a fancy film school, that's the wrapper, or we're doing this for a contest, we're doing this for a film festival. But if you're like, hey, we're a band, we're gonna jam, we're gonna practice, and then we're gonna go out and perform, and what if your performance is go to a local theater and say, "Hey, I'm gonna get other filmmakers. Say, hey, can we get sponsors book a thing or get them to pay for it for one of the off days, and or what, or just project it on a wall. Like, I think there is this level where the art will break your heart because you'll put your work out there and they won't see it. They won't like it. But then if you like get your work out there in a meaningful way, people can connect with it and you take everything out of the equation. And worst case scenario, you're an unsuccessful band. Better case scenario, your band gets people's attention and your movie, sparks, with people.
I love that. I was just talking to someone recently on the podcast who's in consumer products and licensing, and his advice was, "Don't wait to be big."
Mhm.
You can start with an audience of 1, and there's something about even the power of an audience of 100. But if they like your work and if you could really speak to that and have some movement to that. And you're saying kinda the same kind of thing. And I'm wondering what inspired that in the industry, and I think that there's just this democratization of maybe distribution where, like, social media can reach people. It doesn't just have to be television and movie. There's ways to just directly connect to the audience as opposed to going through the studio to then get to the audience, right? Is there something about just how you reach people that allows for that?
I think the reality is, a lot of the systems that have held up how we expect this industry to be have completely been destroyed. I mean, like the newest Star Wars movie getting demolished by a film with a low budget in the box office. It's crazy, you know. So I feel that like we can't operate with the models of like, oh, this is just, this is how it's done or whatever. It's like whatever you could get your audience, get them, like John Waters. I know he didn't start off as an icon. He started off as an underground filmmaker
Right.
getting his movie seen. And I think that even for me, when I work in the system and I'm taking out a project, I could take out a project to a ton of different people and only one exec gets it, and then we're moving, we're off to the races. So it's not just in the cool DIY mode, even on the day-to-day grind in the system, you're still dealing with resistance, but there's could be just one person. But if you make a short film or produce a comedy show, whatever, as soon as you take this small little group of people outside the equation, suddenly it becomes way more interesting. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think in some ways I do a combination of both.
Yes, yes. What would you say are, the habits that your successful clients exhibit?
I think this level of just being okay with it and just being like, "I tried this out," and being collaborative and seeing what happens and not fixating on the thing because there's always like it's like there's always something kind of looming. There's always a thing or always thing that like because I think as long as you're like being curious and there's like you got to be serious. You want to make work like that matters, whether or not it's throwing online or taking it to a studio. Like when you pitch a studio, it takes a lot of time to prep that pitch. So everything matters, but also being able to let go. So it's almost like it's like a weird conflicting forces. You need to be intensely focused on something, the most important thing right now, focused on it, but then you also have to be able to let go. And these are they're saying it's opposing forces. But if they could exist with you, they're great because when it matters, you step up and you really deliver with a script or a pitch or anything. But then it works, great. Let's keep moving on. If it doesn't work, let go, move on to the next. And if you could kind of, I guess, deal with it, I mean, that's just the reality. You're in a good position.
That tug of war that's, I think, inside all of us
Yeah.
of intense love for something and being your own advocate for
Mhm.
this thing and then having to let it go or at least pushing it aside. Could you talk about why that part is important, the letting go?
Because the reality is, um, the paths that you take are non-linear. So something that you don't think is going to sell, it does gain bad feedback. The culture shifts and they want what you have. So I think the other issue is that sometimes people think they live in like amber, like time is frozen. Time is not frozen at all. It's so fluid and tastes are so fluid. I mean, some of my favorite comedians right now, Connor O'Malley, Nathan Fielder, like really like, wild stuff. They landed at the perfect time and I'm the perfect audience for them. So it's almost like previously there was other comedians with different voices, and music changes. You get crazy hair metal, and then you get grunge. Things are so you think that you can't go, oh man, it's not working now. That said, if it's working really well, you can't guarantee it's going to keep working that way either. So I think it's more about accepting that time is a lot more flexible in relationship to how people, general audience, and critics respond to your work. It's not a straight line. It's all over the place.
Hmm. You mentioned pitching. What makes a successful pitch aside from getting that green light in the room? How should a writer prepare?
I think what's important is they should know in some ways what the game is of what that project is. If it's more of a commercial movie, and they're gonna need to know while they're hearing it, is like, what is it? Like the trailer, like how are we gonna sell this thing? I know it sounds kind of, oh, it's commercial. How do you sell it? But like they need to make money. That's their job. Unless the government start in America, which they don't, finance films. In other countries they do. They don't do it here. But until it happens, the studios are looking for a return on investment. So when you're selling them, you're also teaching them something. How are they gonna? You're teaching them how to market the movie. And if you are not good at teaching them that, then you're going to fail because they will themselves go, I don't know how to do it. But then even worse, you might be pitching the vice president of a studio, and then they have to pitch above them. So if they don't know how to freaking sell it, there's trouble. So I think that there needs to be a sense of what is the big idea? How do you service that big idea? Like, what are the set pieces? And not just service them where just random things happen. You're servicing this big idea with an escalation. And then you're grounding that with character. And if the person listening does not understand the mechanics of the big idea, how you service it, they're going to be like, the audience is not going to understand it either. They're not going to enjoy it. And then they're not going to know how to market it. So I think that you have to look at it like showing them how to sell. And just because you're pitching a studio doesn't mean it ends there. Say you sell at a studio, a pitch. Someone gets hired to write a script. People are going to have to potentially pitch, other people who to be involved. If there's a director involved, that's fine. But if there isn't, get a director, get actors. You have to ultimately get it greenlit. The studio ultimately has to agree on it. So there's all these people, reps are going to get pitched to, talent's getting pitched to. And then the marketing goes, we got to pitch to the audience. And it doesn't end there. There's one last. The audience that sees a movie, if they love it, they're pitching to their friends and family or people randomly on social media. So this idea of something being sold, it's being sold almost infinitely times
Huh.
to eventually create a success.
Yeah.
And if any part of the break, the selling is not working, it could just stop.
It's like the world's longest game of telephone,
Yes.
but if you can't pitch it in a way that they can repitch it, it's not gonna go anywhere, right?
No.
If you're kinda stumbling, if you're, lost in the wilderness in your pitch, how are they gonna they might like it, but how are they going to repitch it, right? That's interesting. There's something in, like, on the animation side
Mhm.
where when you're pitching, they're always interested in play pattern,
Yeah.
which speaks to your how are they gonna sell it? Is this a collectible show? Is this adventure show? Is it a doctor kinda, you're,
Yeah.
taking care of, nurturing kinda show? Like, they're looking for that play pattern because that is and I love how you describe this, teaching them how to sell it.
Mhm.
And I never thought of it that way before. And there's a way to integrate it organically into a pitch. You're not saying this is how you sell it, but it's like, yeah, I'm just like, I kind of landed on that. I'm like, that's a really interesting way because you're telling them a story and at the same time teaching them how to sell it.
Yeah, you're teaching them, you're using the character, you're kind of demonstrating and modeling behavior. Then ideally, they take it on and they're not going to get everything. It's like memories. Don't hold on to everything. They hold on to the right details. They have the right details that lock in to the people involved. So really, it's like the big idea is the sign outside of the restaurant, gets people to come in the door. Now, once you get into the door, how are you going to serve that audience, which is the buyer? how you take that concept and explore it through different dimensions that showcases character, thrills, excitement, misdirection, and that's it. So that's it. First, you gotta get them there. No, this is where it's different than, let's say, if you're like an auteur filmmaker, you don't have that same kind of pressures. You may just be like, "Hey, this is the vibe of my movie.
Right.
This is the feeling of it," and that's fine. But if you're saying, "Hey, I want to make a commercial film," this is where we're speaking to. Not all movies, a
Right.
commercial movie in ideally a very commercial system. There are money people out there that want real auteur kind of projects. It's fine. They might just want to meet the filmmaker,
Right.
talk to them,
They're
see it.
their own brand, the
They're yeah,
filmmaker.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And even if they're new, they may have some really interesting kind of thing. So I think what I'm talking about pitching is like you're talking about people are like, we're making commercial films,
Yeah.
not really like and auteur could be commercial. But I think when you're like, hey, I want to go into the studio, get this insane marketing budget and just launch a movie into the theaters,
Yeah.
they're gonna be really thinking about. And the other thing they're gonna also be thinking about too is budget. So each insurance systems, the business models are different. So if you're like, hey, I'm pitching this movie and it's like all this stuff going, they're gonna be thinking the big idea, characters, how are we servicing concept, marketing, all those things are part of it. And they're also gonna be thinking budget. So like I'll give you an example. If I'm pitching you a science fiction project and it's a crazy space opera, they're like, why don't we just adapt a video game, right? But if you're like, hey, I get a grounded science fiction project with just one hidden element, oh, they're gonna be thinking about budget. So I think that's the other part of the equation that they're thinking about. Because even if they could sell it, but they can't recoup this insane budget, that also plays into, or they can't cast it. So I think that there's multiple boxes that they'll check. Then when they know it's a sound investment, they're like, okay, I could sell it, castable, we could attract the right filmmaker, and it's at the right budget that fits our slate,
Mm.
our model, then you have something that could sell as a pitch.
Yeah. And are these things that you are thinking about ahead of the pitch in working with the writer of just nailing down those kinds of core things that the executive will be listening for?
I work in tandem with potentially other reps if it's a package, so they might work
Yeah.
with somebody else
Sure.
or other if I'm a producer on it, work more in the role as a producer. If I'm just a manager on it, I'm not gonna be as much in the collective conversation as it, evolves. So it's case by case, but I think that, like, I generally know what kind of models there are, like, for instance, like, there's horror films that are about 100,000, there's some that are a
Right.
million, 5,000,000. And I'm not like a line producer, but you could generally feel the scope of a project. And I think that as the budget starts going up, this they're figuring out like how big the audience size is. So it's basically they're just managing risk, and obviously I don't want to go out into the market and just be so scared of doing anything risky. I want risky ideas, but unless you just have some crazy contact of money that has zero consequences,
Mm.
they are thinking that like even the film financiers are talking about they're going, hey, maybe I could do $5 million per movie. They're not saying, hey, I'm gonna do $50 million for some of them. They're going, this is what a $5 million film will look like.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is interesting when we talk about how things are changing, most streamers are not gonna get little movies. Like I think that's the thing is back in the day when they were like Netflix was populating their platform, they were more open to taking like all sorts of films of different
Yeah.
sizes,
It was like
budgets.
something for everyone.
hmm
Yeah.
But as you notice, if you talk to a lot of producers who have deals at Netflix, their budgets are bigger. So what you're starting to look at is the streamers don't want little movies typically. Like obviously there's outliers, like huge hits that are lower budget,
Right.
but the general interest is movies that travel internationally. So they have different goals. So what you notice a lot of the smaller genre films, like $10 million and under, the real goal is theatrical because that's where they make a lot of their money or at least potentially increase the value of the product. So there is almost like a pressure if you're making a certain style of film, your business fits into a certain model. Netflix wants to do bigger movies that have mass appeal, that hit all their target audiences typically. Indie movies that are starting to become commercial, those financiers are like, okay, like what is the budget we could do? And they may also be doing a slate model where they'll, instead of doing one movie, they might want to do 20 movies at 5 million, so they have 100 million, whatever. They're spreading the risk over all these movies, and they accept some of them are not going to do super well,
Mm.
but then they own the movie, and then when it hits, the winner makes up for all the movies that weren't profitable. So I think depending on where you want to place your film, so if you have a big budget science fiction film that's like Minority Report, that's crazy big, an indie financier would be like, I don't think we could fund that. It's too risky. But Netflix might go, oh, wow, that's a big idea. I'm interested in doing it. So I think you also, as you build a project, whether or not you're writing it as a script or a pilot, or you're pitching it, understanding the economics of the space that you're working in. I mean, you shouldn't be scared, but just at least be knowledgeable so you're not surprised.
Right. Right. Do you have a moment in your career that you're proudest of?
I really don't actually. Like I every day or whatever, if I see like a direct like images from a set where someone directed something, that gets me excited. Like it's almost like it's weird. Maybe it's a culture of my family. We never look in the rear mirror. Like we just always are kind of looking forward.
Huh.
So, like, it's hard for me to, like, and I know it sounds like a cop out, but, like,
No,
I
no.
know is that it's hard for me, like, I don't really, like, not in a philosophical way, I don't live in the past. So, like, any day I'm reading something and I'm like, "This is good," or, like, like, there's a moment where I really like the work, and then also on the flip side, if I'm taking the work to somebody and it's, like, a producer and they're reading it and they're like, "Man, like, this is really good," that kinda connection that we're on the same page. Like, like we both like the same thing. That's always super exciting
Yeah.
to me. So there's not one individual one, but it's usually either my excitement and surprise of how good something could be, better than expectations, and then when somebody else is also like aligned with
Mm.
what I'm also excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did that philosophy come from of you said it came from your family. Where did that like
Yeah.
what inspired that of not looking in the rearview
I think it was
mirror?
my grandma. Grandma Jean, she just kept moving.
Really?
Yeah, she always like, and it's like she was an influence.
Huh. And it sounds like we were talking earlier about writers need to be able to pivot and let things go when they need to be. And that speaks to that. Let it go. Don't look behind you, at least for a while. Keep moving forward, keep writing the next thing. And that's how you hopefully build a successful career.
Yeah, it's like, oh, my grandma did it. My brother Evan is a filmmaker and a producer, and like he'll be all in, and then he'll be like, "All right, move on to the next one." So it's this level because like you don't want to be like both versions are bad. If you're like, I'm casually into it. No, no. If I'm trying to sell something, I am just like I'm intense. Like let's drive, like let's go. Like I'm feeling
Yeah.
it. Like really want to push this project. But then when I let go, I'm let go. On the flip side, if you don't let go and you still have that intensity, you're not letting go, it could really be hard on you. I've known people who literally their whole lives have been haunted by like just one pass or rejection, and in a way distracts from them expressing themselves and like really being artistic.
Before we go, I like to ask everybody the same question, which is what is a rule in our industry that you believe is worth breaking?
That headlines matter. They don't. Like you could look at the headlines today and like all this idea that there's permanence, like everything is like locked in and it's like this is going to be this way all the time. These are the people that are important or these are like I think you got to be the as you as possible. You just got to be you and not I mean you should obviously be informed by what's happening that could affect the appetite for buyers, of course. But that said, you really want to make sure that you're not getting lost in the algorithms because now like on social media, as soon as I look up some Hollywood thing, 5 more, then people riffing on that. There's almost like this endless meta layer over everything in any industry people care about. And if you're in the arts, you're looking at it and it's fine to look at it. I do too. But you also got to go, you know what? Look at articles from 5 years ago and see what they're saying. And they're all over the place. And like right now, we're looking at multiple temple films really bombing out, and I think there could be more. And I know that years ago, I'm sure there was some headline that said this thing was unstoppable. Like this would never end. nothing's permanent. Obviously humans aren't permanent, movements aren't permanent. You have to focus on really what matters to you, and you got to focus on collaborators that matter too. You can't just go, all right, there's that person there, and like they suck, but I want to work with them. Maybe you yeah, they could be suck sometimes, but if it's just horrible work, you should work with the right collaborators and work with people who are aligned with you creatively, and then focus on making your own headlines. But if you're just, because there is a danger where you could be almost like a news junkie now, where every second you could be like, oh my God, like what's the new thing? And then at a certain point, instead of like looking at what you're trying to make, you're just looking at other people winning. It's like going into the Vegas. You got that, it's that casino mentality. But I think that's fine and it can give you a little motivation. But the core driver should be like your expression, and then ideally connecting with people that will then amplify what you're doing.
Love that. Peter, this is a fantastic conversation and just absolute pleasure meeting you. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for sharing this podcast with me. It's great sharing, talking, and getting into it. It's fun.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If you want more episodes like this, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button. And while you're at it, grab my free guide, The Rule Breaker's Guide to Finding Your Creative Voice. It's a brutally honest roadmap I put together, built from the lessons, mistakes, and breakthroughs I've collected along my journey as a writer. You can download it for free at storyseriespodcast.com. See you in the next one.